recognize the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. My question this morning is to the Premier. The Globe and Mail reported that Keel Digital Solutions was receiving payments from the government as recently as last month. This is contradictory to what the Premier told us earlier this week when he said that funds to the company were frozen in light of the audit and the OPP investigation. So can the Premier explain this contradiction?
I recognize the Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. As I've mentioned many times in this House, within 24 hours in the first week of November, when we received the forensic audit, we reported it right to the OPP. I don't know how I can be any more clear how quickly we swifted upon the forensic audit results and reported it to the OPP. But what I will speak about is our funding, our historic investments into our post-secondary sector, whether it's the $1 billion that the Leader of the Opposition voted down in Budget 2025, or the $1.3 billion that was invested last year into the sector, which, again, the opposition voted down. But, Speaker, we'll continue to be there for the sector, investing into labour market needs, whether it's STEM, skilled trades, teaching, or nursing as well. We'll continue to be there for the sector time and time again, as we always have been.
Back to the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Speaker, it might be hard for the government members to follow along with this because the thing is that this company has received funding from so many different ministers and so many different grant programs as part of this government's pay-to-play scheme. But look, Keel Digital Solutions received about $240,000 a month from the Skills Development Fund. They continue to receive that. They told journalists, actually, that they are expecting funds to hit their bank account again later this month. So can the Premier confirm if Keel Digital Solutions is going to continue receiving funding from the Skills Development Fund?
Minister of Labour.
Speaker, no payments have been made in November, and as the Premier said, we're reviewing all payments, Speaker. It's inappropriate for me to speak on this further, Speaker, but what I can say is we're continuing to support meaningful training in every corner of this province. As we face economic headwinds, we've got to look to Ontarians to say we've got programs to support them with reskilling, with retraining, to join our nuclear fleet, 18,000 jobs with SMRs, new jobs expected with new nuclear, to join critical infrastructure projects like the BridgeCon project over the Rosedale Valley Road that I visited earlier this week, Speaker. These are the programs that we're supporting, helping people change lives to land a better job with a bigger paycheck.
Final supplementary.
Speaker, the Premier said he had frozen the funds to this company when the money was still flowing. Wow. The same company that was handpicked by the Minister of Labour while he was going to the Leafs game with their CEO and taking trips to Paris with the lobbyist that lobbied for them. Every single morning we wake up to new scandals and new headlines about this Minister of Labour and this government. When is the Premier going to clean up his act and fire this minister?
Minister of Labour.
Speaker, it's this Premier that took to the people in January a plan to protect workers, to protect their jobs, to make sure we're investing in the things that we need to stand up and build a stronger Ontario. An Ontario ravaged by massive tax hikes, by a manufacturing fleet that was fleeing this province under the previous government, propped up by the NDP, Speaker. 300,000 jobs that left this province, Speaker. We're standing up. In fact, Speaker, over $40 billion in investment this year alone. Do you know what the number was when the Liberals were last in office? That was $8 billion, Speaker. That's what's grown under this Premier's leadership. It's putting men and women to work. We got to retrain, we got to reskill, and we've got to fund to do it.
Member for Waterloo will come to order.
On the lines of a construction sector that they wouldn't support, Speaker. It's not just organized labour and construction that left them, Speaker.
Response.
It's groups like the Hospitality Workers Union, whom I'm meeting for lunch today, that are helping train a next generation of men and women in our tourism sector. We're going to have their backs and continue supporting them.
Question. Leader of the Opposition.
You know what, Speaker? I'm going to go back to the Premier, but this is about priorities. This is what this is really about. Yesterday, the government suspended debate early to make sure that all of these government members could make it to the Premier's $1,500 a plate birthday party. And you know what? got to tell you?
Order.
You can all come to my birthday party. I won't charge you a cent, right? But
Order.
today,
Government House Leader will come to order.
Today we are surrounded
Government side
by
will come
healthcare
to order.
workers, frontline workers who are seeing their jobs disappear around them, Speaker. And instead of supporting these workers and workers all across this province, this Premier is more concerned about his own friends and his own donors. So why is the Premier willing to spend taxpayer dollars enriching his friends and donors instead of nurses and healthcare workers?
I recognize the member for York South-Weston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I can speak to the countless individuals that have donated to the Leaders' Party, but that's not what I'm going to focus on today. I want to talk about what the Skills Development Fund is doing in my community of York South-Weston. Speaker, I went to Hammerhead's program where they're training young men and women in the skills trade. And I've come across over 100 young individuals that have been trained by the skills development. And what is success for this individual, Speaker? I will tell you what success is. 80, and I'm proud to say to the House today, 80 of those individuals, young men and women who've lived in community housing, have now put a down payment on a home, and they've been able to purchase a home. That's what this program is about. It's about impact, and we're doing that. We're protecting the workers, and we'll continue to do so, Speaker. Thank you.
Supplementary, the Leader of the Opposition.
I know, I'd love to see the source on that one. Look, if this government had any clue about a jobs plan, there wouldn't be 700,000 people unemployed in the province of Ontario right now.
And House Leader will come to order.
We know that this Premier only listens to CEOs. He stood here in this place just a couple of weeks ago when he actually showed up here and he said, no workers.
Order. Order. The Government House Leader will come to order. The Government House Leader will come to order.
To CEOs. He only listens to the people that are going to show up for his $1,500 a day plate fundraisers, and that's the reason he shut down the legislature yesterday. But you know what's interesting? Guess where those dollars go, and guess where salaries do go up, Speaker? Executives of the companies that receive SDF money, because this government is the party of big bosses, not workers. What did the Premier do to make sure that government funds were used to support workers, not C-suite executives?
Recognize the member for York South-Weston.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I can tell you that the NDP has lost its way with workers. And the results I can show you in my riding of York South-Weston, where they've lost 30% of their vote share. And it's because of that type of ideology that they're losing their vote share, Speaker. To protect the workers of this province, you have to support the workers of this province. And the member and her party keep voting. Their record shows they vote every single time against the workers of this province. Speaker, what I'll tell you is a story of a woman that I met at a women's work. Janet, who came from Kenya 2.5 years ago to this country, is now getting double her paycheck and is providing for her family. To protect the workers of this province, Speaker, your voting record has to show it. And unfortunately for the Leader, it just doesn't show it, Speaker.
Final supplementary.
You know, I'm gonna go back to the Premier again. And I know that he only listens to CEOs, but he really should try listening to workers for once, like the nurses and the healthcare workers that are here today in the galleries. They learned that 40 of their colleagues at the North Bay Regional Health Centre are going to be laid off. The hospital is at full capacity, and the patients are seeing longer and longer wait times, Speaker. And this Premier is more focused on delivering results for his friends and for lobbyists through his pay-to-pay schemes like the Skills Development Fund than he is on delivering health care, and that's the truth. So back to the Premier. When is he going to clean up this mess and fire this Minister of Labour?
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, let's talk healthcare and the Skills Development Fund, who's helping train healthcare workers, nurses, PSW, thousands.
For Waterloo,
Speaker, we've had 100,000 workers across Ontario receive employment within 60 days of this fund and of this program that's helping change lives. Change lives for people who are building. You heard, Speaker, about the projects we're building, from new nuclear to new mines, to new public transit, to new hospitals, to new schools. It's going to require a workforce. We want to make sure we're training that workforce to build and to achieve our ambitious infrastructure plan of over $200 billion. That's why we've launched this fund, to help change lives, and it's working, Speaker. It's working for the union training centres, for the unions who abandoned that party. They abandon them because they know their future is better off under Premier Doug Ford, who's going to secure their future by building, and that's going to guarantee their paycheck, Speaker.
Question. I recognize the Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And in the words of the great Yogi Berra, it's déjà vu all over again. Another day, another revelation about Keel Digital Solutions. And as we've heard, they've been receiving $240,000, that's right, $240,000 a month while they're under a forensic audit. And I'll remind the minister and everybody on this side of the House, the forensic audit literally says they're hiding something from us. They're hiding something from us. Shouldn't the money have stopped once they started that audit? They received a payment in October. That's right, October, last month. They're expecting one this month, but I have a feeling they might not get it after all of this. But the question is, why would a company that's under a forensic audit, that's now been referred to the OPP, still getting money? It should have stopped, Minister, when it had an audit, but at least when we are alerted to having a forensic audit. Why didn't that happen?
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, you heard from my colleague within 24 hours. This was referred, Speaker. And as I said, no funds from our ministry have flown this month. Speaker, in our Skills Development Fund, we have strict risk assessment measures, monthly expenditure reporting, spot audits, clear TPA conditions within the program. These controls, Speaker, are critical to improve the integrity of the program, Speaker, and that program is changing lives. As I mentioned, 100,000 Ontarians, employment within 60 days or less, Speaker. Some of those Ontarians have been transformed through the incredible work of the Unite Here Action Centre. Local 75, Speaker, I'm meeting with them for lunch today, where we're going to talk about the life-changing work they've done. I've attended some of their graduation ceremonies. I've invited that member opposite. He hasn't shown up, Speaker. He won't attend those unions because they've abandoned his party, Speaker, because they know that thanks to this fund, it's changing lives. It's changing lives for the young women and men who are being transformed at their Action Centre. And I'd ask that member, where is the Action Centre?
Back to the Leader of the Third Party.
So the Minister of Training Colleges and University was giving the money after the audit anyways, and so was Health. So I'll try to put this in simple terms. It's not when you found out the results of the audit, it's when the auditors said they're hiding something from us. If you were dealing with somebody that felt that you were hiding, wouldn't you say, we need to put a pause on this because you're not telling us what we need to know? That is a reasonable thing. I can see the Minister of Finance nodding in agreement. He understands that, right? So let's look at some facts, right? Let's stick to the Minister of Labour's involvement. His best friend was Keel's lobbyist, the one he went to a Paris wedding with. The ministry said the company's going to buy its own software from itself, in and out scheme, right? It was flagged for an audit, then a forensic audit, and now at the OPP Racket Squad. And they continue to get money every month. So I guess the real question is, why won't the minister or anybody on that side take responsibility for the continued payment of money to this company while they were under...
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker. In fact, Speaker, it was I that ensured we audit all programs under the Skills Development Fund, something we brought in. Every program gets audited. Everyone. So it's not unique to have an audit, Speaker. Every program gets audited, Speaker. We've got robust tools tools in place to help train workers, to give them a shot. When we've got a president who's launched an all-out assault on key sectors of our economy, Ontarians want to know that they've got a premier that's going to support them with better training, Speaker. Better training to help build a more prosperous Ontario. We've got to stand on our own 2 feet. It's this premier that said we're going to procure and buy Ontario. It's this premier, after they left us with expired Chinese PPE, that said we're going to build that stuff here in Ontario. It's this premier that said we're going to build hospitals, schools, bridges, new nuclear, so we can be energy sufficient. And Speaker, it's the men and women who work in the unions who get that job done that abandon them and back this premier, because when they get to work and earn a paycheck, their future is secured, and that's what this premier is going to continue to.
Supplementary, the Leader of the Third Party.
I don't think the minister's auditing everything, and if he is, he better get some new auditors, and he'll read the Auditor General's report that'll tell him that exactly. Don't take it from me. So Keel's lobbyist is the minister's close personal friend, the Paris wedding. And is that why the payments continued? Is it because his seatmate at the Leaf game is a director at the company? Is it because the CEO of Keel Digital Solutions has deep connections to the Conservative Party? Is it because of donations? Why would you continue to give somebody money that you didn't trust? Any of us, right? In anything, at home, or your family, in business. It's unbelievable, Minister. So I think reasonable people would just simply say to the minister,
Question.
Why will you not take responsibility for what happened?
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker. I've stood in this House every day taking responsibility for our program, and it's a shame he's denigrating the very public servants who do audits for all of our programs, who conduct monthly visits, who go to the training program and visit the workers who are doing the training, the trainers who are leading the training. We visited training centres in every corner of this province. My parliamentary assistant mentioned a women's work. We were recently there with them at IBEW Local 353. We could talk about how members of their executive donate to the NDP, but again, as my parliamentary assistant said, that's not what this is about. This is about changing lives. This is about a next generation of electrical workers working on transmission lines to build affordable energy in every corner of this province after the previous government left people choosing between heating or eating. Speaker. That's what we're doing, changing lives, mobile training units going into Indigenous communities, helping training supported by the SDF, helping break down barriers for underrepresented communities to enter the skilled trades. We're never going to stop.
I recognize the member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you, Speaker. I looked carefully at the numbers in the Auditor General Skills Development Report. Low-scoring projects got only 51% of their target for participants getting a job. High-scoring projects got 68% of their target. So high-scoring training projects were way better at getting you a job. The minister went in and he chose low-ranked proposals over high-ranked proposals. The result? 7,000 people who could have did not get jobs. Speaker, how is this Premier going to tell 7,000 unemployed people that he blew their chance to get a job in order to fuel the PC gravy train?
Minister of Labour.
Speaker, 1 million net new jobs since this government came to office. 1 million. Speaker, in communities like mine, when I went to manufacturers who were ravaged by the previous government, mums and dads who were sent home, furloughed from their job because of their irresponsible actions, raising taxes, driving businesses out, construction workers who were left scratching their head because, of course, the previous Premier wanted Ontario to be a service economy, Speaker. Well, all of that's changing under this Premier. We're building, Speaker, we're building in every corner. Public transit, so many subway extensions, I can't even name them all. The Northland, two-way all-day go to communities like mine, Speaker. The Ontario line, the new Union Station that I recently visited where I met Marvin, who's a Hammerheads grad, something the member from York South-Weston mentioned. Every day we stand in this House referencing tangible projects that are changing lives for people like Marvin.
Kingston and the Islands.
Speaker, the ranking system for skills development, it really worked according to the Auditor General. Low-ranked projects got only 70% of the number of people they promised to complete the program. High-ranked projects got 90% to complete training. High-ranked projects got more people trained and got more people employed, and yet
Minister of
so
Natural
many
Resources
were
will
not
come to
chosen,
order.
passed over and given to friends who had low-ranked projects. Speaker, how can the minister defend the scandalous meddling in skills training, which costs jobs for 7,000 unemployed people?
Minister of Labour. Associate Minister of Women's Economic and Social Opportunities.
You know, I worked at a time when the Liberals were in leadership and there were mass job loss. So many families that were dual income families turned into single income families. And you know who were suffering the most? There were women. Women suffered the most under the Liberal leadership. So many jobs in the province. And they didn't even support women getting into industries like construction, like welding, like the trades. But that's what our government is doing. They didn't do it, but we are. And
the leader of the third party will come to order.
Speaker, of the investments in the work that our Minister of Labour has done to see thousands of women enter into the skilled trades. Madam Speaker, a woman's work is a skills development recipient. And they are training thousands of women getting into the skilled trades, something the Liberals didn't do. So we won't take less.
Back to the member for Kingston and the Islands.
Speaker, these numbers I looked at from the Auditor General's report cover rounds 1 to 4 of the Skills Development Fund. The data isn't in for round 5, and there's still $700 million of gravy to come in round 6, 7, and 8. I hope the government members had a good time at their event yesterday after they adjourned the House early. Through you, Speaker, I'd like to ask the Premier, how did funding for round 6 go last night?
I recognize the Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunities.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to look at our numbers. 390,000 women are working in the skills trades industry right now. 11% increase this year alone. 10,000 women have been able to access the supports and wraparound supports to ensure that they complete the training in skilled trades. Madam Speaker, we are seeing more women being able to leave industries and go into jobs that are transforming their lives. This is our record. It's not the record of the Liberals that chased away thousands of jobs and put so many women's lives at risk because of it. So we won't take orders for them. We're going to keep training women, and the Skills Development Fund is going to keep funding the transformation of men and women in the skilled trades and so many other sectors like STEM. I'm very proud of our work, and we're going to continue to keep doing it. Thank you.
Question, I recognize the member for Nickelback.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Ma question pour la ministre.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is for the Ministry of Health.
The health teams are here today in the gallery. They have been on strike for 5 long weeks. They're on strike because they have not received any recruitment, retention, or pay increases for a very long time. What is the government doing to ensure these workers at North York Family Health Teams are compensated fairly?
I recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, I think everyone in this House would like the North York Health Team to be operational and serving patients in their community, but we also have to understand that collective agreements are negotiated between the employer and the employees. And I don't think there is anyone in that party that would suggest we need to, or we should, be inserting ourselves into those negotiations. Having said that, to suggest that we have not expanded and enhanced recruitment, retention, and investments in our community care healthcare system is simply false. We know through investments that we've made through $2.9 $2.2 billion, not only increasing the number of primary care multidisciplinary teams that are operating across Ontario, but also enhancing and ensuring that the existing operating teams have those funds available to them.
Back to the member for Nickel Belt.
Thank you, Speaker. The primary health care system have been flatlined for about 12 years. A 2.7% increase is not keeping up with the cost of living. Speaker, while these hardworking people are on strike, 95,000 patients do not get the care that the family health teams uniquely provide. That's cancer survivor program, mental health counseling, nutrition therapy, smoking cessation, high-risk foot and wound care, and the support that keeps their family members healthy and out of hospital and emergency room. What is the government doing to ensure primary care funding is used for the intended purpose and that these primary care workers that are here today receive proper pay for the hard work they do?
I recognize the Minister of Health.
Member opposite knows full well that our primary care enhancements and our investments, $2.2 billion, includes not only increasing the number of primary care multidisciplinary teams that are available to operate in the province of Ontario, but also enhancing and giving money to the existing primary care multidisciplinary teams. I am frankly shocked that the NDP party is suggesting that there is an opportunity or any desire for our government or any government to insert themselves into a negotiated settlement between an employer and an employee. How far you have fallen.
Oh, that's good.
Question, I recognize the member for Don Valley North.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services. Speaker, a month ago, I asked the Minister, when will the more than 64,000 children stuck on the Ontario Autism Program waitlist finally receive core clinical services? 1 month later, still no answers. Speaker, how much longer will parents be forced to watch this government use the $2.5 billion skills development slush fund like a personal piggy bank for friends and family instead of using those tax dollars to end the autism waitlist?
I recognize the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services.
Thanks very much, Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the important question. Madam Speaker, 8,000 families. That was the total number across the province who were receiving supports and services under the previous government. For us, that was unacceptable. Right. For the people of Ontario, the families, the parents, that was unacceptable. Yep. What did we do? We listened to families. We took action, Madam Speaker. We backed that action by record investments. Madam Speaker, 8,000 families in total under the previous government. Today, more than 23,000 families are receiving an expanded core service, Madam Speaker. This is in addition to the tens of thousands of families who are accessing supports through other streams which were never provided under the previous government. So, Madam Speaker, let me make it very clear. We'll continue working with families, with service providers, to ensure no child and youth in this province is left behind.
Back to the member for Don Valley North.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And Speaker, while I hear the minister's attempt to string together some sort of answer with various numbers, the number that he continues to ignore is the 64,000 children stuck on the Ontario Autism Program waitlist. Speaker, let me offer the minister a different number, and this really should be a very simple yes or no response. Do you support your government's decision to give $10.5 million to the owner of a downtown strip club instead of using that money to end the autism waitlist?
I recognize the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services.
Thank the honourable member for the question. Madam Speaker, let me make it very clear. It's the children and youth in this province that's our top priority, Madam Speaker, which is why, let me just get this straight so that everybody can hear. Under the previous government, 8,000 families in total were receiving support because they were investing only $300 million across the province. Today, Madam Speaker, we're investing $779 million in the Ontario Autism Program. As a result, Madam Speaker, I'm going to read a quote from a mother who has sent us as a result of one of the programs that we brought in as a result of listening to experts, to clinicians, to family members, to those with lived experience. This is what the mother had to say. Madam Speaker, the quote says, here is what one mother shared with me and on the Entry to School program. She described the Entry School program as the program that has been most helpful to her son. The results, he has begun speaking after being told he will never talk again. Can you imagine the joy I felt as a mother, Madam Speaker? The fact that he began speaking words in
The member for Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the great Minister of Education. Less than 3 weeks. Yes, I know. Gotta get to the question, colleagues. Less than 3 weeks ago, following a scathing government report into the Near North District School Board, the minister took decisive action and issued binding directions to the board. Since then, Near North Director of Education has failed to attend multiple community meetings, and the board has failed to comply with the minister's clear directives. To make matters worse, the Leader of the Opposition has suggested that students and families should wait until the next election to expect accountability. Colleagues, maybe this is what she told her members at her leadership review, but our government finds this unacceptable. Speaker, students and families in the Near North cannot afford to wait years for an election while their education is put at risk. So, through you, Speaker, will the minister sit back and wait for the next election to get them back on track, or will he take action right now?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. What a good question from the member opposite. I can assure him that the member for Parry Sound Muskoka wouldn't let me sit back and not take action for 4 years, and nor would the people in his community. Let's keep in mind that this is a community that for over 10 years has been waiting for this school and have not been able to get that school done. The children in that community are right now being educated in a partially demolished high school because of the ineffectiveness and the inability of trustees to put students, parents and teachers first. And imagine the Leader of the Opposition suggesting that I should wait 4 years at the next municipal elections, the trustee elections, to take any form of action. Completely unacceptable. But I expect, Madam Speaker, that is why the Leader of the Opposition yesterday chose a silly stunt to get kicked out of this place to avoid the accountability of voting against parents and teachers and students. And she didn't want to be on the record voting against Bill 33 because she knows parents, students and teachers support it, and that's why she chose a silly stunt to get kicked out of here, but left her party up here.
Back to the member from Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Speaker, and maybe the Leader of the Opposition will stand in her place today and ask the Minister of Education, but I won't hold my breath. Waiting for the next election to hold school boards accountable is simply not good enough for students. We have seen what happens when school boards are not held accountable for their failure to students. A clear example is Brantford Haldimand Norfolk Catholic District School Board, where trustees spent hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars on a luxury trip to Italy to buy art. They stayed in fancy hotels, rode in luxury cars, and ate at Michelin restaurants, spending taxpayer money that should have been in the classroom supporting students. Speaker, can the minister tell the House what he's going to do to make sure that trustees stop failing students and how our government is building an education system that puts students first?
Back to the Minister of Education.
Very much. And it's not even just that. Like, consider this in the Brant, what you just referenced. These are a group of trustees that called themselves back into special meetings so that they could change the rules to allow themselves to go on this high-priced Italian vacation to look for artwork. Now, it gets even worse because the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, we support them to the tune of about $275,000 for trustees. They chose to give themselves more, They actually spend $1.3 million in Ottawa supporting trustees and direct expenses of over $444,000, Madam Speaker. And it goes even worse than that. Toronto District School Board, the Toronto Catholic Board, multi-year surpluses into multi-year deficits, Madam Speaker. When you look at what the actions of these boards are doing, it's not putting parents first, it's not putting students first, it's certainly not putting teachers first. The opposition Liberals and NDP had an opportunity to vote in favour of students, parents and teachers yesterday. They said no, we will take action, we will put them back on track and we will live up to our responsibility.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Today in the gallery, we have the Women's Coalition here for their National Housing Day lobby. These remarkable organizations support clients facing homelessness, intimate partner violence, mental health crises, and dangerous substance use every single day. They need increased funding from this government for supportive and transitional housing beds with mental health supports. A month in a shelter costs $6,000. A prison, $15,000 a month. A hospital stay will cost you $30,000 a month. But a month in a supportive housing unit, less than $4,000. It's not just good policy, it's a great business case. Investing in proven solutions, this government can do so. But instead, they're doubling down a bill on Bill 60, which rips tenants' protections. When will the Premier grow a heart and build the housing, the supportive housing that Ontario's women and children need?
Associate Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker, and thanks for the question. Listen, we continue to make investments for Ontarians every day, for people that need that housing. That's why we've committed over $1.7 billion this year alone for supportive housing and homelessness services. Through the New Deal for Toronto, where the member represents in Toronto, investing $1.2 billion directly into shelters and homelessness services, and another $120 million for the New Deal for Ottawa. Let's talk more numbers. $700 million in 2024 in homelessness prevention program and Indigenous supportive housing funding. Speaker, all these dollars are going into the supports and services that this member asked the question about, and we continue to work with our housing service managers to make sure that they have the resources to make the investments they need, whether it's in Toronto, whether it's in Ottawa, whether it's in Kenora, everywhere in this province. Speaker, we are committed to the people of Ontario, the women of Ontario, to make sure they are getting what they need in terms of...
Back to the member for Toronto Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. The real numbers are that almost 40,000 people in Ontario are waiting for supportive housing, and that's a 4-year wait, with 3% less housing housed annually. Speaker, this gallery is filled with frontline housing workers who are fed up with governments hauling out of their public services, people in Ontario in mental health crisis and are dealing with addictions on massive scale. We need this government to invest in the supportive housing that allow women to heal and thrive. As one client said today, housing women is a national building project. Can the Premier please explain why his government is refusing to build and fund the mental health and addiction treatment beds for women on the scale that is actually needed in this province?
Recognize the Associate Minister for Women's Social and Economic Opportunities.
Thank you, Madam Speakers. You know, women's shelters are extremely important throughout the journey for women trying to get safe, try to get the support that they need when they are fleeing violence. That's why our government just recently actually announced $26.7 million to expand shelter bed access for women to over 300 beds to be added to the system. And it just happened last week. But we're also making sure that economic supports are available as well. That's why a part of Ontario Stand's whole fifth pillar is economic stability and independence for women. Through the Investing in Women's Futures program and the Women's Economic Security program, our government is making sure women have the training and the supports that they need to be able to get employment that pays well, so that they never have to choose between housing, keeping themselves safe, or staying with an abusive partner. Our government will continue to support women, and we thank the Ontario Women's Coalition for being strong advocates to help women, and we'll work together to ensure that women are safe in Ontario.
I recognize the member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Colleges and Universities. It is a shame what is happening with the $2.5 billion Skills Development Slush Fund. It was supposed to train workers and help people to build up this great province. This week, we learned that millions have gone to Keel Digital Solutions from this ministry and the Skills Development Fund, even after it was flagged for a forensic audit and has been sent to the OPP anti-racket branch. So knowing that Keel Solutions received millions after this, Madam Speaker, my question is simple. Has the minister or any of his staff intervened or influenced who received money from his ministry or the Skills Development Fund?
Good question.
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. I appreciate the member opposite's question, and I just will remind him part of our $1 billion investment in Budget 2025 that their party voted down had 2,200 new seats for nursing. I know he is a nurse as well, Speaker, and he'll appreciate the expansion in nursing. He was just at Carleton recently. Speaker, on top of that, we've invested $750 million into over 20,000 new STEM seats. Speaker, we're going to continue making the strategic investments that are needed for the labour market. That's on top of the $1.3 billion, the largest investment into post-secondary that we invested last year, Speaker. But, you know, I hear the new leader of the opposition stating that 10,000, but the reality is, Speaker, he doesn't like to be reminded when they were in power, tuition went up over 48% under their watch. Right now, we have an affordability crisis. The reality is they don't care about the affordability or the accessibility of the students. It's our government that cares about what the students.
Back to the member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't know what any of that had to do with my question. I thought that this government was supposed to be the government of fiscal responsibility and accountability. But every single day, we are learning more and more and more about how rotten the Skills Development Fund is. And now you're all being dragged into it, and you know it.
All of you.
So, Speaker, this minister essentially fired 10,000 people from our college system because of the chronic underfunding and future cuts coming to the post-secondary system. George Brown announced today that they're cutting 1/3 of their world-renowned culinary program.
Wow.
Minister, given that you're letting our post-secondary system collapse, how did millions of dollars go to questionable companies after they came under an audit and an OPP investigation? Speaker, who knows who at Keel Digital Solutions?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
I can't say I know anyone at Keel Digital Solutions, but what I do know is that operating funding has gone up over 12% since 23-24, Speaker. The member opposite doesn't want to admit that. Funding for the post-secondary sector is the highest it's been in Ontario's history, Speaker. We are currently doing a funding formula review with all 47 of our publicly assisted colleges, Speaker. We'll continue to make those strategic investments, including Budget 2025, that the member opposite voted down our budget. Unfortunately, you voted down $1 billion that we invested into our post-secondary system. Are you proud of voting down $1 billion for our post-secondary system? It sure does look like the member opposite is proud of that.
Member for Don Valley North. I recognize the member for Markham Thornhill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nation Economic Reconciliation. Speaker, people across the Ontario want to know that our economy stays strong and safe. They want a good job. They want the stable supply chain. And they want our government to act when new threats appear. Right now, we see the real risk. Tariff from the Donald Trump, global pressure on trade and key industries, Ontario cannot sit still. We need a project that protects our future. We need a strong partnership with Indigenous communities. And we need to unlock the ring of fire so we can build the metals, energy, roads, and our province depends on. Speaker, can the Minister explain how working with the Indigenous community and advancing the ring of fire is helping shield Ontario from rising economic?
I recognize the Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation.
How about that member of Provincial Parliament for Markham Thornhill? Let's do it. He's just a great guy, and he's asking an awesome question. I'm happy to answer, Madam Speaker. Of course, I take us all back to about 18 months ago when the Premier and I were up in Greenstone celebrating the development of the Magisi Plaza, owned by the Menominee Development Corporation, 3 First Nations that have got together and see the opportunity to build out a commercial plaza and staging area as we embark on one of the most magnificent corridors anywhere in the province, at least in my view. This will be a staging area for activity that's going to be happen fairly quickly. In fact, some of it is, Madam Speaker. Arrowland First Nation Shared Prosperity Agreement set the stage to fortify energy transmission lines to go farther north to the communities most proximal to the Ring of Fire who are on diesel generation. Madam Speaker, these kinds of economic partnerships are setting a new standard for how governments work nation to nation with First Nations for economic.
Member from Markham Thornhill.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his answer and for his strong leadership. Speaker, across Ontario, we are seeing First Nation lead major energy and resource project. They are building the key infrastructure. They are building the transmission lines. They are opening doors to new jobs, and they are creating long-term economic opportunity for their community. These partnerships are not small. They are nation building. They are helping us develop critical minerals, expand clean energy, and connect remote communities to the grid. And they show what we can achieve when the First Nation have true equity role. Speaker, can the Minister explain how expanding this economic partnership with First Nation is helping build a stronger, more secure future?
Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Well, Madam Speaker, I was in Calgary last week at the Spark Energy Conference, and we were talking about all of the different kinds of economic partnerships that we're developing with First Nations communities in this province. And I'll start with Watay Power, Niagara Region Wind Farm, Oneida Energy Storage, the Chatham Lakeshore Transmission Line, the Wasagan Transmission Line. These are energy projects that all have significant percentages and tens of millions of dollars of equity positions for First Nations communities. And we're being invited across the country to talk about these opportunities and the business model we're using to work with Indigenous business leaders, Madam Speaker. It's changing the game here in Ontario. It's attracting attention across Canada. In fact, even out in London, England, at the Stock Exchange, they were asking, how is Ontario doing this? And why is it so popular? It's popular because it means something. It's not quixotic policy, Madam Speaker. Instead, it's practical, on-the-ground relationships built on business and good faith with First Nations businesses and leaders. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for St. Catharines.
Thank you, Speaker. To the Premier, many veterans, families, and Royal Canadian Legions in communities across Ontario have expressed how important it is for young students to understand the significance of Remembrance Day and all the conflicts past and present. Can the Premier share whether the government supports expanding and strengthening Remembrance Day education and learning opportunities in our school system so that the students across Ontario can continue to honour those who have served past and present?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First, let me just thank the member for the question, and of course, thank her for she has a wonderful statement every year, and I know her son is a service person with the Navy, if I'm not mistaken. So thank him on our behalf for his service. In the lead up to Remembrance Week, I did issue a statement to all boards across the province of Ontario that it was my expectation that they ensured that every single school honoured our veterans in a way that was appropriate, and very clearly to all of them, if any one of them did not do that in the way that I expected, that we would step in and make sure that they did that. And I know the member has a bill before this House. I only just recently, I will take responsibility for that. I only just recently learned about it earlier this morning, and I can tell you that On Friday, I was preparing already to make an announcement with respect to a more unified curriculum across the province, across every school board and across every school, so that we can ensure that Remembrance Week is honoured in the way that reflects the sacrifices that were made to give us the country that we have.
Back to the member for St. Catharines.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you to the Minister, it's a good thing that the Minister does support furthering student education on Remembrance Day, because as he mentioned, I did table a bill 2 weeks ago, actually. It's too bad that you just read it this morning, because it's a really good one. It entitles the Remembrance Day Observation Act that does just that. Speaker, to the Minister, will you support Bill 65? Allowing working Ontarians to, the opportunity to take part in Remembrance Day services on November the 11th, and support the creation of specific school curriculum that expands students' learning of military conflicts in Ontario. It's really important that we get this curriculum straight and to the point.
Minister of Education.
Well, thank you. Again, the member will know that there is already a mandatory, within the Education Act, there is already a mandatory curriculum. But I don't think that curriculum is strong enough, and I think it needs to be strengthened. I agree with the member that it absolutely needs to be strengthened. There already is within the Act. Again, I know the member, I've said that we will have a mandatory curriculum across the province in every school. Now, remind the member that your party voted against that centralization just yesterday, but I appreciate that you want to go in that direction. So let me just say this. It was...
Order.
Even in the talking of a centralized curriculum, when it comes to Remembrance Week, you have division within that party, which is too bad. I will say that I know this member has been very consistent when it comes to remembrance activities. I can tell you that we are going to strengthen what is already mandatory in the Education Act to ensure that it is consistent across the entire province. It is.
I recognize the member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Speaker. Despite the Auditor General's report that calls the Skills Development Fund not fair, accountable or transparent, despite intervention by the Minister of Labour to approve low-scoring applicants connected to his personal friends, despite low-scoring applicants getting hundreds of millions of dollars while high-scoring applicants were denied, this government continues to stand by their man. And we have a Premier saying that the Skills Development Fund is the best program ever. But today, I'd like to hear from the Minister of Finance. Before being elected, he held senior roles in financial services. Through you, Speaker, to the Minister, what is his view on the Auditor General's finding that his government handed out hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars in a process that the Auditor General found to be not fair, not transparent, and not accountable?
Oh, yeah.
I recognize the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You want to hear my view? Yes. I support workers right across this province. We want to build economic prosperity for everybody in this province, Madam Speaker. I think it's very painful for the member opposite to stand up there. Yes, I have a financial background.
Order.
But, let's think about our track record helping the workers and businesses and families in this province. An economy that's gone from $830 billion to $1.2 trillion. Something we never saw under the previous government. Almost 1 million jobs created. In fact, over 1 million jobs created since we took power. That's a pretty good track record.
Response?
And the most painful of all, we're cutting taxes and fees and seeing credit rating upgrades while they raised taxes and saw credit rating downgrades.
Back to the member for Don Valley West.
Well, Speakers, unfortunately, the Finance Minister didn't answer my question. But, he has a strong financial background. He knows how to do his due diligence.
Yes.
He knows a bad deal when he sees one.
That's right. Yep.
And I'm sure in his previous career, when he saw deals where a company wanted a loan, but then when he did his due diligence, he found some questionable business practices,
he would have said, sorry, no deal. But here, we have the Minister of Labour giving money to companies, even though these companies basically failed the equivalent of their loan application. In his previous career, if the Minister of Finance was supervising someone who approved that bad deal and he found out about it, he would have fired that person. So my question to the Minister of Finance, through you, Speaker, why hasn't he demanded that the Minister of Labour be fired?
Minister of Finance.
I think the question, Madam Speaker, is will you or will you not support the fall economic statement and the $30 billion of support? Madam Speaker, $30 billion of support right now for the workers and the people. Think about the WSIB rebates going through. Everyone knows small businesses need our support. $2 billion.
Scarborough-Guildwood will come to order.
Council right now, Madam Speaker.
Leader of the third party will come to order.
And we continue to support people right around
the third party will come to order.
A plan to grow Ontario in our energy sector, in our critical mineral sector, in our infrastructure, in our technology. We've got a plan
Valley West
to
will come
protect
to order.
Ontarians and families and workers, and we have a plan to grow Ontario. This is your...
Question. I recognize the member for Scarborough-Agincourt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Associate Attorney General. Speaker, people across Ontario want to feel safe in their homes and communities. They want a justice system that puts public safety first. They want action when repeat violent offenders are arrested again and again. And they want to know their government will keep standing up for them. Speaker, we all know the federal bail system is not working. We have seen too many cases of dangerous offenders being arrested and then released the same day. Police, families, and local leaders are calling for change. They want stronger rules.
Question.
They want tougher action. They want real reform. Speaker, can the Associate Attorney General explain how our government is pushing for stronger bail laws and tougher action on criminals?
I recognize the Associate Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member from Scarborough-Agincourt for raising such an important question. He's right. Ontario communities deserve better than a broken justice system that allows repeat offenders to be arrested and released on the same day. In my new role as the Associate Attorney General, I've spent the past months listening to those on the ground, the prosecutors, the police, the municipalities, the organizations and the people directly impacted by criminal recidivism. Here's what's clear, Madam Speaker. Repeat offenders are being routinely allowed to wreak havoc on the public by way of an outdated and weak federal bail system. Our government is holding Ottawa to account, and the results are showing with Bill C-14 being released this fall. It's a good first step, and it demonstrates that our advocacy is leading the charge to keep families safe. Madam Speaker, we know there is more to be done. Under the leadership of Premier Ford and our government, we're not going to stop. We're going to get it done.
Back to the member for Agincourt.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Associate Attorney General. Speaker, when it comes to federal bail laws, the people are clear. They want real action, not soft words. They want repeat violent offenders held to account. And they want a justice system that works for victims, not for criminals. Speaker, our police, our prosecutors, and our communities have been clear. The current system is not strong enough. It does not give frontline officers the tools they need. It does not give prosecutors the support they deserve. And it does not give families the peace of mind they expect. as the residents of the Scarborough Agincourt. Speaker, can the Associate Attorney General explain how our government is working to keep our communities?
Back to the Associate Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you again for that really important question. As the last election results showed, the people of this province have entrusted us to protect them. Public safety is and will always be our government's top priority. That's been made very clear by our Premier and by our government. That's why we're investing over $110 million to make sure high-risk offenders comply with their bail conditions and that prosecutors have the resources they need to handle complex bail hearings. And that's why we have amended the Bail Act to improve enforcement in cases where an accused breaches their conditions. Madam Speaker, we're never going to apologize for our calls and actions to keep repeat violent offenders off our streets.
Question. I recognize the member for Ottawa Centre.
Speaker, after nearly a decade in power, this government has consistently failed to build the housing that Ontario needs. They've missed their own housing targets. Homelessness has increased 25% to over 80,000 people, and now instead of taking responsibility, they're blaming tenants. Bill 60 doesn't build a single home. It makes evictions faster and easier. The government's own failure created the backlog crisis at the LTB, and now they're punishing renters for it. Speaker, why is this government blaming tenants for their failure to build housing instead of building nonprofit and co-op housing, making evictions the last resort, ending exclusionary zoning, and stopping the loss of existing affordable housing?
The Associate Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I appreciate the question. Listen, I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate the Leader of the Opposition, by the way, on her Speaker's Award for Community Theatre yesterday. That was quite a performance. I laughed, I cried, I shook my head, as usual. But to the matter at hand, thanks to the member for the question. Listen, there's one thing that people in Ontario crave, which is balance in our system. And that's what we are doing with Bill 60, bringing balance back to the system. People expect a rental market that works for them, one that's predictable, one that's stable, where agreements are upheld so everyone can benefit together. Tenants have extraordinary protections in Ontario. That is not changing. But as I said, we are bringing balance back to the Landlord-Tenant Board to make sure the system works for responsible renters and responsible landlords, because for too long these delays and efficiencies have been a problem. So we are fixing that problem. We are bringing balance back, and we are ensuring that the renters...
Recognize the member